Clibanarius vittatus, Bosc, 1802, family Diogenidae. This species is morphologically and behaviorally very similar to Clibanarius cubensis. It is a medium-large, slowly moving crab, averaging only slightly less in size than C. cubensis. The species is very rare on Curaçao. Only 2 specimens were found in the shallow grass beds along the west side of the entrance to Sponce Water. As in the case of Clibanarius tricolor, it has not been reported from Curaçao previously. Although one shell-fighting sequence between these 2 individuals was observed and filmed in Curaçao, the majority of the observations of the behavior patterns of C. vittatus were carried out in Miami, Florida. Specimens were collected on the shallow sand and mudflats along the northeast side of Key Biscayne in Bear Cut, not far from the Institute of Marine Science of the University of Miami. As with C. cubensis, some of the crabs seem to move shoreward following high tide and retreat to somewhat deeper water as the tide went down. Very few specimens of cubensis were found in this area along Bear Cut, where vittatus was rather common. Behaviorally, Clibanarius vittatus is almost identical to C. cubensis. Their behavioral repertoires appear to be the same, and both seem to use the various displays in similar situations and proportions. The position of the chelipeds in the fully extended position was a bit higher, the dactyl having moved through 100 degrees to a position almost completely parallel to the substratum. The cheliped presentation display was the same as in cubensis, and was common in aggressive interactions. In both species, the dactyls are lifted off the substratum in the presentation position. Clibanarius vittatus has 2 types of ambulatory movements. The standard raise, which has little, 5 to 10 degrees, forward movement, and a forwardly directed movement which often strikes the shell or head region of the other crab. This forward ambulatory movement was often used by an aggressor, as it was moving into an opposed position, and it appeared to be successful in causing the other crab to duck down into its shell. As in all hermit crabs observed, after an individual has been turned on its back and pulled back into its shell, it comes into view in a characteristic posture. The chelipeds are slightly raised, separated, and the dactyls opened slightly. All 4 ambulatories are fully spread and held in a position similar to a quadruple raise. The first and second ambulatories form a 20-degree angle with each other in this defensive posture. The first and second ambulatories form a 20-degree angle with each other in this defensive position. The crab usually holds its first ambulatories in a spread position, as it uses the second pair to attain an upright position. The shell-fighting behavior presented only minor variations from that of Clibanarius cubensis. The positioning movements had more side-to-side elements. The motion of the aggressor's body shell described a horizontal figure 8, over but slightly below the aperture of the defender. The wrapping movements were slow, although the attacker did move from the out to in position rapidly, 0.06 seconds. The movement outward took 0.66 to 1.14 seconds. The entire cycles ranged in duration from 1.98 to 2.22 seconds. The shell movement involved in a wrap varied from about the length of the eye stalks to the full length of the cephalothorax. Definite sexual behavior was seen once in Clibanarius vittatus, and another sequence similar to that seen in C. cubensis was observed. In this latter interaction, a male was holding a female in the opposed position while grasping her first ambulatories in his chelipeds. He pulled her about the observation tank while holding on to these ambulatories, and at one time gave a short series of rocking motions about an axis through the plane of the female aperture. This followed some cheliped movements up and down in the aperture. However, nothing more happened and the pair separated. No spermatophores were found. In the one complete sequence of sexual behavior seen, the larger male, 23 millimeters cephalothorax length, was observed holding his ambulatories over and around the female, 19 millimeters cephalothorax length, who was upright, ambulatories on the substrate. About 10 minutes after initial observation, the male turned the female into an opposed position. The female remained partially out, appendage visible for some time. During this time and later when the female ducked down into her shell, the male tapped at the rim of the aperture, chelipeds and ambulatories with his own cheliped. These short tapping movements were executed by both chelipeds, both alternately and simultaneously. The simultaneous movement of both appendages occurred more frequently in the latter minutes of precopulatory activity. It appeared that the female shell and limbs were usually lightly touched by the male's dactyls, although some movements did not touch any part of the female or her shell. After about an hour of male tapping, the female began moving her chelipeds against the male's. Shortly after this, the male and female eased out to the copulatory position, ventral surfaces opposed and ambulatories intermingled. Copulation lasted 5 seconds. Shortly after copulation, the male let the female get into an upright position. However, he kept his ambulatories around her for 15 minutes. The female had many eggs in place and many not yet in place when examined. The dial pattern of activity of Clibanarius vittatus was not measured.